Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, thank you so much for being here. Welcome. I hope this video finds you well, this podcast. Let's continue with this letter, that Nichiren wrote as a response to this woman who's lost her son 49 days earlier, and requesting Nichiren to do a memorial service at that 49th day mark of her son's death. And she sent a bunch of offerings and food and so on, along with her request. So Nichiren is taking the time to explain to this woman that not only has she recently lost her son, but she lost her husband some time ago. And so she's the matriarch of the family now, shouldering all of the burdens of the land and functionings of the family. Her husband used to be in government, so she's not a serf. She's a well-to-do woman in the society at the time, but still relying on her sons to be the male component of the household, right? So the young, doesn't say in here how he died, just says he passed away. And Nichiren is using the opportunity to remind this mother that her husband, as well as her son, were avid students of Nichiren's teachings of the Lotus Sutra, the practice of MyoHoRenGeKyo, and that there's great benefit in that, although it's hard to think of that in terms of losing a loved one, of course. But he wants her to understand that because of their dedication and their practice, that they had a good life, and they left this world in a good place. It may have been war, it may have been murder, it may have been many things, but their mental state, because they chanted Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo, their death was far easier, because they didn't have such avid attachments to everything. They'd already broken their samsaric bond by chanting Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. And that's something to consider. That's something we don't talk about much. We're very focused on, as Nichiren would say, single-mindedly fusing with our Buddha mind condition, right? But simply being, and it's not just simply chanting, it's simply being resolute in our dedication, our energetic will to instantiate our Buddha mind, which is already there. We just need to get our samsaric mind out of the way. And the path to that, as Shakyamuni prescribed, is MyoHoRenGeKyo. So if your conviction is strong, then chanting Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo guarantees that your Buddha mind is awakened. Whether you actually experience the Buddha mind, that is a different issue. That is what we're all trying to do, and trying to maintain it. So when we chant enough Daimoku, we recite the Lotus Sutra, or a couple of chapters, or a section, and we chant Daimoku, and we enliven our Buddha mind, we understand and see the world differently, and it does affect our samsaric mind. We may become aware of it. We may see the world around us change. But remember, in Buddhism, the world around us doesn't change independent of us. We are the world around us. So if you observe change in your world, you should also be absolutely certain that that reflects a change in your own karmic momentum, your own kinetic energy, right? And because that's a fact, Nichiren wants to remind this mother who is grieving that her son, as well as her husband, we're greatly, how to say this? Nobody wants to die, right? And that's a very samsaric thing to say. So at the moment of death, or at the time leading to death, there's great internal suffering and strife in the mind of a human being. But if you have dedicated yourself with resolve to MyoHoRenGeKyo, at that time of death, there will be a great letting go and a much easier time of extinction, because you won't be samsarically attached. Do you see? That's a very important factor in our practice that we don't spend a lot of time talking about, because, let's face it, Buddhism is about living well. But there's an effect in living well that also influences the way we leave this earth. And so he's reminding her that not only is this a fact, and it's illustrated throughout the different sutras and the stories, the expedient means, and the Lotus Sutra itself, but that by committing her practice, sticking with it, deepening her resolve, as it were, in her own practice, she too will be able to attain that kind of a good life and a good life ending. Of course, as is usually the case, and who knows how much of this is a cultural bias in the translator, but it may have very well said it to her, that she will join her husband and their son in this, in her death. But see, this is that illustrative kind of, it's confusing to hear that. What he means by that is that you will attain the same Buddha as they have done. Right? It's not like there's an awaiting Buddha planet out there we're all going to go to. And I haven't read the Sanskrit myself, so I don't know how much of a, or for that matter, the kanji, the Japanese script that Nichiren would have used to communicate these letters to this woman. So I don't know exactly what Nichiren said. None of us do. But these are extant texts. So if you want to chase that scholarship, educate yourself, and become an expert translator, an academician that would then at some point have access to these original documents, please let me know what you find. But I would venture to say that even if he did say something to that effect in the 13th century Japan, it was because there was still a lot of mysticism about what happens at the time of death and after the time of death, right? I mean, if you want to see a lot of mysticism about the death experience, read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It is tremendously filled with all of these. I mean, it's like I'm not Eckhart, Eckankar. Has all these different astral levels and everything. It's almost like reading something of that nature. It's really far more simple than this. Of course, there are all these stages that we go through in every moment of life, moment to moment. Our mind's all over the place. If you're concerned about that kind of thing, study the 10 worlds and the 10 worlds within the 10 worlds. That alone will start to make your head spin, but you'll certainly understand the depth of meandering and attachments in samsara that we go through all the time, most of which we're completely unaware of. It's just happening underneath the surface of what we're experiencing. It's amazing when you study the 10 worlds, the 100 worlds, and eventually the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, that we have the audacity, really, to think of ourselves as a I am this person, and I am this kind of a person, and this is what I do, when under more and not a whole lot of analysis, it becomes quite evident that who we say or think we are is a moment-to-moment vacillating thing, and we don't even bother to connect the dots. We just are convinced this is it now, this is who I am, only an hour later to be something completely contradictory, but still convinced nonetheless that we are so consistent. It's really, you got to be able to laugh at yourself, because it can get very upsetting. And this is the nature of study at Buddhism, is that there's such a granularity of understanding that when you start to turn that back on your own analysis, looking at your own life and the way you think, wow, it makes you chant. And it actually, I think for me, when those aha moments were happening, they actually became, I won't say instrumental, but very much a part of my insight when chanting to the mandala, of seeing the mandala as not only a transcription of all of Shakyamuni's teachings, but as a kind of a granular scalpel weaving its way through all of these different aspects of what I think of as myself, so that I could disassemble it in a way mentally and look through the cracks to see what's really going on. Is Buddha in there? Is that where I touch Buddha? Is that where I see, I get my Buddha mind? Get out of the way, all this stuff. Show me this Buddha. Right? We all have different ways of getting to that. Ultimately, it's the energy we put behind the focus. Whatever words you want to attach to it aren't even necessary, but they may be in order to start you along. It's the conviction, the desire, the intense will for your Buddha life condition to manifest. Simply that. It's everything when you're chanting to your Gohonzon through Nichiren's mandala. So, here we go, continuing on with the letter. The meaning of this passage is that the Buddhas of the 10 directions will all assemble in throngs and fill the lands to the east, west, north, south, in the 8th direction and major world systems, all 410,000 million nayutas of lands. They will be seated side by side like the stars in the heavens, or the rows of rice and hemp plants on the earth, and will guard and protect the votaries of the Lotus Sutra, just as the various ministers and subjects guard and protect the heir of a great ruler. So here he is, Nichiren, trying to, with words, man, my nose, it's allergy season for me, I guess. Anyway, so Nichiren is trying, as I am, to create this vision of what it is like to open that Buddha mind, open that Buddha door, that Buddha eye. So all of these things we've read about, the Buddha's emanations in the 10 directions, those are all potential Buddhas. You and I are potential Buddha, right? Because we are Buddha. It's already there. The only thing that needs to happen is to manifest it. And when we manifest Buddha, all of the other Buddha become visible. There's a grand unification, if you will. All you mathematicians may be snickering right now. Talk about a theory of everything. Anyway, if you're into maths or science, you'll get that joke. To be guarded by the 4 heavenly kings and their retainers is a great honor. Remember how much of a privilege it is that you are able to practice MyoHoRenGeKyo. Already, because of your commitment to do that, you have certain protections in your life. It's like having bodyguards at the door, right? But with the protection of all the 4 heavenly kings, all the stars and constellations, all the deities of the sun and moon, all the chakras and brahmas, one can be completely confident Moreover, all the persons of the two vehicles, all the bodhisattvas, Bodhisattva Maitreya in the inner court of the Tushita heaven, Bodhisattva earth repository on Mount Karadya, Bodhisattva perceiver of the world sound on Mount Putalaka. These are all references to stories and sutras, right? And Bodhisattvas Manjusri on Mount Clear and Cool, each together with all of their followers will guard and protect the votaries of the Lotus Sutra. So one may indeed rest assured. He's trying to give this woman some confidence because she's desolated right now. No husband, just lost a young son. And furthermore, Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions will come of their own accord and watch over one through all the hours of the day and night, which is an honor beyond the power of words to express. This is the nature of our enlightenment. It's the Buddha is the Buddha is the Buddha. All of us, since time immemorial, have this capacity for unfettered life. It was this splendid sutra that the late Shichiro Goro, her son, put his resolute mind in, and through which he attained Buddhahood. And today, on the 49th day following his passing, all the Buddhas have surely gathered about him in the Pure Land of Eagle Peak, seating him on their palms, patting his head, embracing him and rejoicing, welcoming him with affection as one would welcome a moon that has just risen or blossoms that have just burst into bloom. So his death, although a loss in samsara, because he was a practicant of MyoHoRenGeKyo, has assured by Shakyamuni, by the Lotus Sutra itself, is assured of having attained Buddhahood. And in so doing, experiences this vast glory and awe of life. This is the picture Nichiren wants to paint for this mother. When we consider why the Buddhas of the 10 directions throughout the 3 existences should so firmly protect the Lotus Sutra, we come to understand that it is only natural. For the Lotus Sutra is the father and mother of the Buddhas of the 3 existences and the 10 directions. It is their wet nurse and their Lord. Frogs feed on the sound of their mother's voice. And if they cannot hear their mother's voice, they will not grow. The insect called Karakula feeds on wind, and if the wind does not blow, it will not grow. Fish must have water, and birds depend on trees to build their nests in. In the same way, for the Buddhas, the Lotus Sutra is their source of life, their sustenance, and their dwelling. Right? This is all about manifesting Buddha through our practice of Buddhism. MyoHoRenGeKyo, Nichiren's mandala, attaining our Gohonzon, developing our Buddha wisdom. Why do we need Gohonzon and Buddha wisdom? Because we're in samsara. We're locked into this mental place that we need to transcend, get around, leap over, bust through, however you want to visualize it. Remember a long time ago I talked about life being like careening through a field of high cornfields and just smacking all the time through all these corn stalks, right? Until finally we chant enough that we get to the edge of the field and boom, we burst out into this beautiful meadow, blue skies, and wonderful grasses, whatever your vision needs to be. But it's like that. It's like a complete life-changing paradigm shift when you're no longer attached to all of the delineated little things that keep us locked into samsara, this new lens. Well, Buddhahood, right? As fish live in water, so the Buddhas live in this sutra. As birds dwell in trees, so Buddhas dwell in this sutra. As the moon's reflection lodges in the water, so the Buddhas lodge in this sutra. You should understand that in a land where this sutra does not exist, there can be no Buddhas. A little reminder of how fortunate we are. In ancient times, sorry, I was looking at the clock. In ancient times, there lived a sovereign named King Rinda. Here we go with the King Rinda story again, who ruled over the southern continent of Jambudvipa. What was it that this king required for sustenance? He listened to the neighing of the white horses, and this became his food. As long as the white horses neighed, he grew more youthful, his complexion glowed, his spirit was vigorous, and his physical strength remained undiminished, and he was able to conduct the affairs of state justly. Therefore, a great many white horses were gathered and cared for in his country. In this respect, he was like the ruler of Wei, who gathered a great many cranes, or Emperor Tetsung, who loved fireflies. The white horses would neigh only if they were white swans, who were singing. And accordingly, a number of white swans had also been gathered. Right? We know this story. And Nichiren will make the allusion again that this story depicts the import and significance of the Lotus Sutra as the vehicle to Buddha. Right? So one time, for some reason or other, the white swans disappeared, and as a result, the white horses no longer neighed. So the king's sustenance came to an end. And he was like full-blown... so the king's sustenance came to an end, and he was like full-blown blossoms that wilt under the dew, or a round moon that becomes shrouded in clouds. When it became apparent that the king was about to expire, his consort, his heir, the high ministers, and all the people throughout the kingdom turned pale, like a child who has just been separated from its mother, and wet their sleeves with tears, crying, "What shall we do? What shall we do?" In that country, there were many followers of non-Buddhist teachings, persons like the Zen and Nembutsu believers, the true word teachers, and the precepts monks of our own time. In addition, there were disciples of the Buddha, persons like the members of the Lotus school today. These two groups were on very bad terms, as incompatible as fire and water, or as hostile toward each other as the peoples called Hu and Yue. The ruler issued a proclamation saying, quote, "If these non-Buddhists cause the horses to neigh, then I will abolish the Buddhist teachings and put my resolute mind entirely in the non-Buddhist doctrines, honoring them as the heavenly deities do chakra. But if the disciples of the Buddha cause the horses to neigh, then I will cut off the heads of the non-Buddhists, seize their dwellings, and hand them over to the disciples of the Buddha." At this, the non-Buddhists turned pale with fear, and the disciples of the Buddha fell to lamenting. But since that alone would not resolve matters, the non-Buddhists took their turn first. For 7 days they carried out their practices, but no white swans gathered round, and the white horses failed to neigh. Then it was the turn of the Buddha disciples, and they were assigned the next 7 days for the performance of their meditations. At that time, there was a young monk named Ashvagosha, or Horse-neigh. What a convenient name, right? Who, relying upon the Lotus Sutra, the object of devotion for all the Buddhas, for 7 days offered his meditations, whereupon white swans came flying to the platform where he was meditating. As soon as one of these birds would utter a cry, one of the white horses would neigh. The king, hearing the sound of the neighing, rose up from his sickbed, and all the persons who had gathered there, beginning with the ruler's consort, turned toward Ashvagosha and bowed to him in reverence. But it wasn't him they were honoring. It was his practice. It was Buddha, right? So the white swans came, 1, 2, 3, then 10, 100, and 1,000, filling the kingdom. And the white horses neighed, 1 horse, 2 horses, and then 100, 1,000 white horses, all constantly neighing. When the king heard this sound, his face became that of a 30-year-old man. His mind was clear and bright as the sun. And that's a very good description right there. I'm always looking for things like this that begin to describe what it's like to feel that awakening moment as we do our gongyo or chant daimoku fervently. Then we stop for a moment and we realize our life condition is completely different right now. And this is a good description. His face became that of a 30-year-old man. His mind was as clear and bright as the sun. That hits me, because that I've been trying to describe when I've had those moments after long daimoku, where I've stopped and just looked around, feeling like I was completely detached from this planet, just floating and with awe. I can't describe it. With the mind as clear and bright as the sun. Yeah, I get that. And his administration was upright and fair, so that the rain of Amrita fell down from the heavens. The common people bowed before his commands as though before a wind, and the kingdom prospered for countless ages. So this is a fairy tale, obviously, but it's a fable, more a fable than a fairy. It's an analog to the experience of MyoHoRenGeKyo, the awakening of one's Buddha. The Buddhas are similar to this, Nichiren says. Many treasures Buddha, during the time when the Lotus Sutra does not appear, remains extinct. But in an age when this sutra is recited, he makes his appearance in the world. And the same is true of Shakyamuni Buddha and the Buddhas of the 10 directions. That's us. In the language, in the parlance of Buddhist scholarship, we too are emanations of Shakyamuni Buddha. Since the Lotus Sutra possesses this wonderful power, how could any person who upholds this sutra be abandoned by the sun goddess, by great Bodhisattva Hachiman, or by great Bodhisattva Fuji Sengen? This is truly reassuring. On the other hand, if a country should oppose this sutra, then no matter how sincerely its people may offer up meditations, that country will inevitably experience the 7 disasters. You may be certain that it will be overthrown and destroyed by another country, like a ship that encounters a storm in the midst of the ocean, or like grass and trees that are withered by a great drought. In a similar manner, in Japan today, no matter how meditations are offered up, because the people make light of Nichiren and his followers, the votaries of the Lotus Sutra, none of their various ways of meditating are effective. And instead the forces of the great kingdom of the Mongols comes to attack. Already the country is on the verge of destruction. Watch carefully from now on. Matters cannot continue as they are at present. You should understand once and for all that this is entirely due to the fact that the people are all harbor enmity toward the Lotus Sutra. So it's interesting. On the one hand, he's very inspiring to her about her practice and the practice of her child, deceased child, and her husband, also deceased, and encouraging her to keep her practice going. But at the same time, he urges her, look around at the people who aren't doing this, if you want a reminder of how terrible things can get in samsara versus the life you can experience through MyoHoRenGeKyo. It has now been 49 days since your son, the late Shichiro Goro, has passed away. though impermanence is the way of all things. Even one who merely hears the news of a person's having passed away finds it hard to bear. How much more deeply, then, must his mother or his wife grieve, reference to her husband. I believe I can understand something of your feelings. Though children may be young in years, or more mature, though they may be ugly or even physically handicapped, their parents love them nonetheless. In your case, your child was a son, and in addition, he was rewarded every way, and he had a warm heart. When your husband, the late Ueno, preceded you in death, he was still in the prime of his life, and your grief on that occasion was no shallow matter. Had you not been pregnant with his child, the one who are now lamenting, I know you would have followed him through fire and water. Yet, when his son was safely born, you felt that it would be unthinkable to entrust his upbringing to another, so that you could put an end to your life. Thus, you encouraged yourself and spent the following 14 or 15 years raising your children. How, then, are you to endure what has happened? You must have thought that in the future you would have 2 sons to rely upon, and yet on the 5th day of the 9th month of this year, this younger son, like the moon hidden in the clouds, like blossoms scattered by the wind, passed from sight. As you wondered whether or not you were dreaming, lamenting at how long the dream goes on, you felt that this dream is indeed like reality, and 49 days had already passed. And if it is indeed real, how will you bear it? The full-blown flower remains on the tree, while the bud, just about to open, has withered away. The aged mother remains behind, while the young son has departed. How heartless is the transience of the world. Now you must shun and abandon this heartless world, entrusting yourself to the Lotus Sutra, in which the late Shichiro Goro placed his resolve, and quickly reached the eternally abiding and indestructible Pure Land of Eagle Peak. You must attain your Buddhahood. You must be convinced. Your son's father is on Eagle Peak. He made it. His mother remains in the Saha world. I sympathize with the feelings of the late Shichiro Goro, who is in the interval between the two of you. There is much more that I would like to say, but I shall end it here. With my deep respect, Nichiren. Well, that was quite a ride. I suppose this was a very in the context of the samurai state of the day, the upheavals in Japan, the Mongol Empire threatening to take over the country, having attacked already and future attacks on the way, a lot of internal strife and battling going on. Nichiren, he plays several roles in this letter, don't you think? On the one hand, thanking her, wanting to do this memorial for her, talking to her about the resolve that her son, as well as her husband, had for the ultimate law of Buddhahood, MyoHoRenGeKyo, that without fail they opened their Buddha mind, life condition, and in death were released from the samsaric bonds that may have in fact certainly played out in their death, so that they don't go on to suffer, right? All the mythologies about after you're dead, you're going to go to hell or you're going to go to heaven, all of that. That in Buddhism, we don't really care about all that, although there's a lot of dialogue around it because that's what people's traditions and inculcated thoughts are. But the bottom line is they attained Buddhahood, so they're released from suffering. And so he's encouraging her, a woman who could look at her life as having been left behind, right? He laments this. He wants her to know. He understands the heaviness of her heart right now. And for this very reason, take that heaviness and push it down the hill to gain momentum and push you to strongly determine yourself to do as they did and attain your Buddhahood. Rededicate yourself to your practice. Right? You have a remaining son. Be Buddha rather than living in misery. There's plenty of misery to go around in Japan. There's plenty of strife, but all that misery and strife is because people aren't doing this. They're not dedicating themselves to their highest potential. They're throwing it overboard. They don't know the riches that they have. And so they act like lost animals, right? Don't let yourself slip into that. Use that as further motivation to chant, to study the Lotus, to become enlightened. How much more of a mother would you be connected with your remaining son if you could do that? And his practice together. He's trying to inspire her, but he doesn't want to feel distance from her. This is why he wants her to know, I understand the depth of grief that you're in, but don't just live there. It's not good, right? You'll wither. Use the depth of those feelings to motivate you to chant. Earthly desires are enlightenment, right? All right, that's long enough. That's the end of this letter. We have a couple more to go before we're done with all of these Gosho. Don't forget you can download them as podcasts, listen to them. I hope they help strengthen your practice. Please be aware of your health. We all need you to be healthy. Discussion in the comments, as always. I welcome questions and dialogue with you. And be kind to one another, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for being here. Bye now. Hey, thank you for being here. Did you know there's a third way you can help support this channel, and it won't cost you a cent? Yep. If you are not able to be a patron on Patreon or use the PayPal me at .com at Sifu Sylvain because you don't have the financial fortune to help support this channel right now, you, as I say, always support this channel by watching, but you can also help us grow so that maybe one day we can get over 10,000 subscribers and YouTube will grace us with monetization. It's not a lot, but if you can make sure you're subscribed and share a video like a simple one, just go into the search criteria and type monk and you'll have a video that'll come up that's been up for years about what is a monk. You know, it's called monk, who, how, where, something like that. That might be a great introduction to somebody who doesn't understand what a monk is to begin with. It's a tool. Use this channel as a tool to help you with your bodhisattva practice, and share a video to somebody who you think, oh, I know somebody who'll benefit from watching this. And in that way, you can help us grow. And that's a really good way to help your practice along as well. So just wanted to drop that in on you in case that's something that you might find useful. Take care of yourself again, and I'll see you soon. Bye.